This is Hisoka or Mike, however you guys want to call me. I'm going to be doing an interview today with a fellow collector. So go ahead and introduce yourself, your name or your handle, and a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Ethan or FourthstartTCG as I'm known on Instagram, YouTube, and E4. I'm a moderator on E4 and that's sort of where I spend the most amount of my time. I'll make YouTube videos every now and then. I'm currently in university, and when I'm away at school, my focus is much more on that. But over the summers and when I got time, I'll throw a video up on my channel. Yeah, so that's mainly me. I'm in school for sociology. I'm going to be starting my PhD in sociology in the fall. I'm just finishing up my master's, and I'm doing that in Canada. So pretty exciting. Going to be an interesting time for me then. That's sort of like the life stuff that's
Mhm.
going on. But
You go to school in Canada, but you live in
yes,
the
yeah.
U.S.
So yeah, I go to
Okay.
school in Canada. I live in the U.S. Mainly. Um, I'm a dual citizen, so I can go in Canada for much lower tuition rates. So
Mhm.
it's really like the best of both worlds. So,
Maybe healthcare too as well.
oh yeah, yeah, the free healthcare is great.
Oh, I
Um,
was just making a joke.
oh no, I'm serious. Yeah.
Geez, that's actually really good. So, yeah, because one of the reasons about making these videos is in E4 you're always linking your investment video, which is kind of the joke, the that inside joke that we have because investing is a big video or series that everybody seems to be doing, and I thought for me I find it a little annoying because everybody's jumping into it. It's the new bandwagon thing. Some people have a good background on financial stuff. You've got David Persian who just came out with his series. There's I forget the other name, but he's actually was a financial investor. So these people have a background, but a lot of these people are talking about investing and they don't even know how to do a eBay search or the tool. So, all this talk about investing, I'd rather get back to collecting. And that's why I want to do a video with Ethan. We share similar goals. I've talked to you over the years. And so I want to get more into collectors and talk more about them. There will be talks about the market because that does affect us getting and acquiring it and other people. But I want to highlight collectors and things about them. So, when did you first get in contact with Pokemon? Like as a kid or game, what have you?
Well, I really, like just like every kid, I was a fan of Pokemon. You'd watch the movies, your friends would bring. I never, when I was a kid, I never had like a Game Boy or anything where I actually played the games, but I would, borrow my friends and play them, and
Mhm.
we'd talk about it in school. I remember, one time my friend told me that he had caught Groudon in a Great Ball, and I was like, wow, so amazed. I thought you like had to get it in an Ultra Ball, and it was so difficult.
Yeah.
So I was, I had Pokemon, just sort of as a thing throughout my childhood.
Mhm.
I collected the cards, really sort of casually, nothing serious. I had like a stack maybe that big
Uh,
that I would, that, they were secured with rubber bands, and I'd bring them to school in elementary school. And then, like most people, eventually I grew out of it. I sold off my cards. I sold them off for probably a, now that I think back on like the conditions of cards that I had and
yeah.
the numbers, I think I got a really good deal for them. I think I sold them for like $80 or something, which for
Wow.
a kid's collection, pretty good back in like probably 2008, 2009 when I sold them. Um,
Yeah, it's
but
probably, I mean, good amount back then.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Especially, and most of them, they were played, they're in bad condition. Um,
Mhm.
but eventually, back in when I was in high school, towards the end of high school, I just sort of got back into it. I was, I think I was doing some Amazon searches, and I had seen people opening Pokemon cards on YouTube, and I thought it was, really cool to see people opening up these old packs of cards that, I got a pack every now and then, but I was never opening a booster box, and these people were doing these
Yeah.
things. So it was really cool. Um, so eventually I ended up seeing that like some of these cards that I had like idolized as a kid, these EX cards,
Hmm.
these rare hollows and stuff. Uh, they were super cheap, and I could buy these EX cards for like $5. You know,
All
uh,
over the.
yeah, exactly. This is back in 2000, and I think I got back around 2014. Um, so there's still quite a bit of cheap
Mhm.
stuff available in the market. Uh, so I had some money from working a part-time job in high school, so I was spending my money on Pokemon cards, and before I knew it, I was basically feet first into the entire thing. I
Mhm.
discovered professional grading. I found that
Okay.
as a really interesting way to distinguish myself from other collectors and other people, to
Mhm.
sort of take the next step that I wanted to. Uh, I don't know if you remember, I actually bought my first PSA graded card from you.
I think you
Uh,
told me. I don't remember the card or where that came across.
it
On
was
YouTube or something.
it was a PSA 9 Delta species reverse hollow salamence, and
Um,
I think I bought it for like $25 or something. Um,
Damn.
and I think it's a pretty good deal today. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, and I still have that card. But I thought that was once I got that and got into professional grading, it was all downhill from there, as people say.
Was that kind of the reason when you bought a card, or were you just looking into grading? Like, how did you find grading?
Well, I saw people talking about it, and I saw it as a way of really like differentiating myself from other collectors,
Mhm.
because everyone's got a binder full of cards, uh, but I saw professional grading as sort of like the next step up. Really just sort of like the logical step where you go from, okay, you collected as a kid, you had some cards,
Mhm.
now okay, now you're like more grown up and you're going to move on to something more
Mhm.
serious. um,
Okay.
I also like the value aspect of it, to see like, oh, I
Mhm.
can buy these cards and then grade them and they'll shoot up in value.
Oh,
um, so that's sort of what I was thinking about for professional
mhm.
grading. um, and yeah, it just, again, it came from watching YouTube as well, watching people like Silver Snorlax doing the PSA submission and return videos, and all that. It just sort of, it was really interesting to me, so I got into it fairly quickly.
Okay. So from what you told me, you kind of mentioned EX series was something that was in your childhood. I grew up with Base and Jungle and Red and Blue, and like you, I didn't actually have a Game Boy. I ended up playing on my friends, and I remember, at night playing it because he had tons of video game systems, so I played that. What games did you play or systems did you play when you were younger?
So I played, when I was a kid, it was Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. That was sort of the big, it was Gen 3. Though that was what was out. You'd play it on, the Game Boy Advance or the Game Boy Advance SP. I never really, so I never had a Game Boy. I think one of the things that got me back into Pokemon actually was, my brother had a DS, and I
Hmm.
convinced my parents to buy him Pokemon Diamond. And because, I thought it was like, all right, all kids have to play Pokemon,
Hmm.
like it's just a video game rite of passage. You got to play Pokemon. And so my parents bought it for him for Christmas. And I don't think he was really into it, but I borrowed his DS a couple times, and that was the first time I'd ever played through a Pokemon game. Uh, so it was pretty fun, and that definitely was something that you know got me back into it as well.
So, about family, did your brother at all get into it anymore, or any other siblings get into Pokemon?
No. Um, got my dad in the background of the shot. All right, we'll edit that out.
Yeah.
All right. You want to start that question over? Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, just about family, and just did anybody else get into it? And what does your family think about you doing it now, or do they know much about it? Your friends and family.
Uh, Well, none of my family really got into it too much. They know about it because I talk about it a lot. Uh,
Hmm.
at first, I think my family, especially my parents, were kind of hesitant given the amount of money that I was spending on these cards.
Hmm.
Uh, but I actually, so back in, I think a couple years ago, um, so I've gotten lucky a couple times with, scoring some big grades on big cards and making good decisions on when to buy and stuff. But a
Hmm.
couple years ago, I decided to sell off a good portion of my collection. So I sold off about $10,000 worth of cards, and I
Hmm.
bought my first car all for myself, paid cash. No,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So I didn't have any, no loans, uh, no debt on my first car, and it was pretty nice. I got a Audi A4. Uh,
Oh,
so
what-
being able to fund that entirely from selling Pokemon cards, I think definitely sort of caused a shift with, my family when they now saw that like this is some serious stuff that you can make some money in. And even to this day, when they're not collectors, so they don't understand when I drop $500 on a piece of cardboard encased in plastic,
yeah,
uh, but then when that piece of cardboard goes from $500 to $2,000 in a year, that's something that is
yeah,
much more understandable to people who, understandably don't have a lot of interest in collecting Pokemon cards.
yeah. I definitely agree. It seemed weird spending money on Pokemon at first. I think what got me into it was SMG Quest, and he had that video about selling those boxes to put a down payment on a house. And I was actually deployed at the time, and I had my girlfriend at the time send me a Nintendo DS and some Pokemon games. And I was like, I'm here, I'm just working out, I'm bored, things were going on in the world, and it kind of brought things to a halt. So I had some more free time. And Pokemon in that video, I was like, oh, maybe I can make some money on it. Oh, I like Pokemon. I played it since I was young, and that's how I got in it. And I don't think, I mean, I'd have packages sent home, and my parents would be like, "What are you spending all this money on?" And it definitely is hard to relate. I don't know if your parents um, collected at all when they were younger. My dad did sports cards and comics. I don't know if your dad or your mom collected anything or had a way to relate to what you're doing.
I don't think, not to the best of my knowledge, they didn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those things have popped up. I think Pokemon's had more growth now than a lot of the other markets, but I think even sports cards with that Gary V video was showing other markets are starting to catch up on popularity, and
Hmm.
people are starting to have a yearning for nostalgia. I think is kind of
Yeah,
the way
yeah.
it's put. So going on to that, did you play? Did you ever play Pokemon Go?
Oh yes, yep. I'm level 40 in Pokemon Go.
Oh, so you currently play then?
Oh yes, yep. Yeah.
What team?
Team Mystic.
Oh, come on! You couldn't go with Valor. I
No,
mean, I know
no.
what's Scott. What is he? Because I know he's almost level 40 as well.
I think he's Valor.
Yes. Okay. So we're
Yeah.
outnumbering you guys a ton. We should take a poll on the forum. What team on Pokemon Go are you?
No, definitely, yeah. I'd be interested because I know that like Team Mystic is the largest in numbers wise, like across the entire Pokemon
Yeah.
Go. But I think it would
Mhm.
be interesting to see on the forum, like serious card
Yeah.
collectors. What have you picked?
Hmm. So on there, do you play like the community days, or do you just sporadically play, or play when you're going to school?
Uh, I usually, I'll play every now and then. I used to play a lot more than I do now. But it's difficult now. I think the game has gone off in a little bit of a different direction where a lot of the Pokemon are a lot harder to get. There hasn't really been one of those. There hasn't been
Yeah.
like a Larvitar community day or a Dratini community day, a Beldum community, like one of those really rare Pokemon that like drives you out. I think the last
Hmm.
one was like Bagon in back in like last April, I think.
I
Um,
Slackoth maybe, but he's rare but not popular and
yeah,
kind of.
yeah. So it was is it's kind of like there isn't really that sort of huge drive to get me out. I'll do like the shiny raids, like whenever a legendary shiny comes out, I'll try to raid that. And I've
Okay.
had, mixed success.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's, I play every now and then.
Okay. Have you ever used the gotcha at all?
I do have one of those. I used it basically in the past when I was just trying to, I'd use it when I would like drive to work.
Mhm.
Cause I'd pass by a lot of stops and, just grind for Pokemon. Cause especially like when I was leveling up, that's really all it was just grinding for
Yeah.
Stardust and XP and stuff. So,
Yeah.
I don't use that too much anymore, but especially now because I'm not really like going out and driving anywhere.
Oh, and most people aren't going out. But I was thinking about school where I'm at. There's a lot of stops and a lot of density. So for the gotcha, if those of you that play, it kind of helps build up Stardust. Some people have mixed feelings about it because you're not catching, necessarily, but it kind of saves the hours on the grinding
It
for me.
does.
And you're a student, so I mean, it can be distracting, and you don't want to spend all of your time on catching just monotonous Pokemon over and over again just for dust. So it's helpful.
Yes, it is.
Um, now that we got started the introduction, a little bit about you, what has that led you to as far as collection? Like, what are some of your goals? What have you completed, or what are you currently working on?
So basically my collection, to, you know, put it in a very concise way, it's EX series and uh, a bit of modern stuff. So EX series is the vast majority of my collection. That's where I focus the majority of my time, effort, and money. So my big goals for EX series, one I have completed, and that goal is a complete PSA 10 Japanese set-based EX set.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the Japanese EXs that you could open up out of a pack, I've got them in PSA 10. That's a
Mm-hmm.
97 card set, and it took me about 3 to 3.5 years to complete that. Uh, it was very difficult, but it also fit really well with my style of collecting. When I was doing that, I was, mainly an undergraduate student. I didn't have a lot of money. Uh, and a lot of that collecting was buying cards off of, Yahoo Japan, buying from Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and grading them myself. So the vast majority of that set I personally graded. There really isn't there was not a lot of these cards out on the open market when I was trying to do the set. Um, not there's definitely more today, not as many, but there are more. But I was really excited to complete that set. There are some really difficult cards and sets inside of that to do. So that was really amazing. That was my big goal that I recently completed. I finished that last year. Um,
Oh, that long.
hmm?
I thought you'd completed it much further back. Based on my understanding where you were kind of when I left, I thought you had kind of completed it already, or were
It
there
was
still some missing?
It was so the first couple years I made big progress, but the last, year and a half or so, I was probably at about like 85% for the last year or so, just because finding those last few cards was really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes they just don't show up, you know,
Yeah.
and when you're down to, it's when you're starting out with a big set, it's much easier to make progress because you can
Yeah.
just, buy everything, everything shows up and you need everything. But once you get down the line, it's even if the exact same amount of cards are there,
Mm-hmm.
it's much more difficult, as I'm sure you know. Uh,
Yeah. It
so
takes a lot.
yeah, so finding those last few cards was pretty difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I completed that last year, and pretty much as soon as I finished that, I got started on my new goal. It was a complete PSA 10 English EX set, set based again. That has quickly become out of reach. Cards that were, $300 to $500 are now 1,000 to 1,500. Most
Yeah. It's gone up.
EX10s, you used to be
Mhm.
able to get them for $100 all day. Now finding any under $100 is just impossible. I found a couple, but
Mhm.
they're, Vile Plume and Mr. Mime. and like EX Dragon, Kingdra, and stuff. You know, not really popular ones. So I've been working on that. I started that last year. I got most of, well, not most. I got some like big cards out of the way. So my first two purchases when I started the EX set, I bought Charizard EX and PSA 10, and I bought
Mhm.
Lugia EX and PSA 10. I think that was a pretty good way to start.
Mhm.
Uh, so I was pretty happy with that. Uh, but there are a lot of cards I've missed out on, and right now I'm about 30% of the way
Really?
on that. Or well, I changed after tens got out of reach. I changed it to
Mhm.
PSA 9 and 10. Um,
Mhm.
so even now, some of the nines are a little ridiculous. I think
Yeah.
PSA 9 Celebi EX right now is selling for like $450. To me, that's ridiculous. Uh, I don't know if I'm gonna have to pay that in the future, but
Well, for Unseen Forces, as much as I don't like to admit it, I think we were discussing the ratio of the pulls. There's 13 EXs, I think, in that set.
yep. Or actually, I think
So,
14 if you include the box topper Rockets Persian.
which
But
that one is very difficult to grade as well with the
yeah,
centering. But I mean, it's pretty difficult to complete that set. And how much? Well, going back a second for Charizard and Lugia, how much did you pay for those, or around?
I paid 530 for Charizard and I paid 380 for Lugia. So pretty good deals back in last July, last August. Uh,
Not even a year ago.
yeah, yeah. So it's crazy to see where the prices have gone. Um, but I actually, like I tell this story all the time. I was telling people at Worlds in DC last year that uh, Charizard EX was a $2,000 card, and I bought it at
Hmm.
500 because I was like, it's going to be a $2,000 card. It's worth $2,000 to me. I'm surprised it isn't at $2,000 now.
Hmm.
And lo and behold, a year later, we're at, I think the last confirmed sale was
I,
something like 2,300. Uh,
I thought it was 30. That could just be listing prices, but I'm not. I thought it was closer to the 3,000 range. It's hard to follow all of the prices with how they change, but what are the last known sales that you know of exactly?
so there was a couple interesting ones because there was a fairly significant rise from like 500 up to, and 500 was actually a low for several years. They were mostly selling around 650, and I was actually offering around $650 for it on the forum last
Hmm.
year, and no one bit, and then I got it for 530 on auction. Um, but so for the Charizard, there was a fairly consistent rise, 500, then there was 700, then I think there was a PWCC for 900. Um,
Hmm.
After that, a couple got listed in the $1,100 range
Yeah.
and sold fairly quickly. Then there was in April, I believe, at the end of April, there was a PWCC which went for 1,700. Uh,
Ooh.
and again, that brought a lot more supply out. There was sales, 1,900, 2,000, just about. Then there were a couple listed in Europe, which were for 2,700 or best offer.
Hmm.
And it looked like they sold, but then they got relisted. And it was really just like, wasn't really clear as to whether they were actual sales or whether someone had finagled something, which is actually fairly easy to do in this market
Yeah.
with the trajectory of the market and stuff, and high prices being paid every day. Uh, but then there was just, I think one went on auction in Britain for just over 2,000 or maybe 2,100. And then after that, one sold in the US for 2,300. Uh,
Okay.
so those, $2,700 sales, we're probably never going to know if they were legit or not.
Hmm.
But there was the most recent sale that I know of is 2,300. Uh,
Yeah. PSA 10. I don't even know if I'll even find one listed though. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of stuff like that, as soon as it gets listed, it's either, if it's for best offer, they get a good offer and sell it. Um,
Yeah, didn't find one for
yeah,
sale.
yeah.
It's, the pop is probably what, 300 plus or more for
It's
that card.
actually around, I think it's around 170.
Really?
Yeah.
And my number.
Yeah, I'm not 100%. I think it's between 150 and 200. I know that for certain.
Mhm. And they're fairly easy to grade as far as EX series goes.
Yeah, in
I mean,
general, fire red leaf green isn't bad.
mhm. It's kind of crazy to see the prices from where they were. I mean, I knew that they were undervalued back when I sold out, and even 500 seems really low. Um, but then the box prices jumped, and I mean, I don't know if anybody could have expected that, with the quarantine and all of us being home. And I use an analogy of like a grocery store where it's like everybody goes to the grocery store to buy their main products, their Tyson, their Foster Farms. All those get bought out. Then everybody else buys the off brands or the cheap ones or the expensive stuff. It's like there's nothing to buy, so I'm just going to buy something anyway, and just it's bare bones basically at this point.
Yep,
Um,
yeah.
for your EX series, retracing a little bit, what were the last five cards that you needed or that completed your set
For Japanese.
for the Japanese one?
Yeah, so the last few that I needed for Japanese, it's actually kind of interesting because I was able to, and this has sort of been my strategy for English, um, I was able to get like the big cards out of the way early. So I completed the big sets. I completed like Japanese Rocket Gang Strikes Back, Japanese version of Team Rocket Returns.
Mm-hmm.
I completed that early. Um, I completed stuff like Golden Sky Silver Ocean, Japanese version of Unseen Forces. The cards that I needed, the last five, I needed Shiftry EX from Miracle Crystal. I needed
Mm-hmm.
Aggron EX from Miracle Crystal, Delcatty EX from Miracle Crystal. Uh, I think I needed Aerodactyl EX. I think in Japanese that's in Team Magma versus Team Aqua. Uh,
Oh.
Even though I think it's in Sandstorm in English, but Japanese has a couple like shifted EXs.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were the last four that I needed. And then
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was a fifth technically. I know there was several. I think I was at 9 cards remaining for a while, and then I knocked out 5 of them with a PSA submission that I did.
Okay.
And then I was actually able to buy the remaining 4 already graded.
Mm-hmm.
So
So there's 97. There's 128 for set ones overall. Was is there still an equivalent of the Japanese for that? The 128? Because I know the three starters from Fire Red Leaf Green. There's the 6 boxes with Milotic and all those. Those aren't. What set are those from, or how are those classified for those that aren't familiar with the Japanese EX series or
so
PCG era?
yeah, so the Japanese does this to this day where they put out products with new cards, and then those new cards that are in like decks or promotional boxes in Japanese, they're often folded into our English sets, which come out a few months later. um,
Hmm.
and sometimes you'll have English sets which are amalgamations of several Japanese products and sets. We can see this like just recently with Hidden Fates, which was a mixture of the cards from like this Japanese like family play set, which was designed to get kids and their families playing, and the cards were really simple. Those are like all the GXs in Hidden Fate, like the original GXs, like the Onyx and the Starmie and all like the crappy ones that you don't really want to pull. Uh, it had that. It had the birds, which were taken from another Japanese set, Sky Legends. And then the
Mhm.
shinies were folded in from another Japanese set, GX Ultra Shiny, which was its own set with its own cards and everything. Uh, so that happens now, and it happened back in the EX series. So uh, you would have stuff like the fire red leaf green starters, which were actually part of their own starter decks in Japanese. So there was you could actually, back in 2004 when the set was released, you could go and pull a Charizard EX deck off the shelf in Japan. There were other products like it's called the quick construction starter packs. So those are where there's 6 of those, and that's where a lot of the EX Emerald EX cards come from. So I
Okay, that makes
believe those starter packs you had, goodness, you had Milotic, you had Raichu, Medicham, Dusclops, Camerupt, and Cacturn. So all of those got jumbled into EX Emerald, and EX Emerald, there's no equivalent for EX Emerald in Japanese. It's actually just like a ton of promos that were stuck together and put into this one English set. So Japanese, it has a lot fewer of those, but it also has some EX cards that are, incredibly hard to find, and that, some weren't even released in English.
okay.
So
What actually that weren't released in English? Because I don't know as much about it, the EX series in Japan or Japanese sets.
so there are a couple, like the Deoxys. I don't know. I think it was. I don't know. I think maybe it's called the Emerald Gift Box. I think. So what that came with was a Rayquaza EX, which I don't think that artwork was ever released in English. It also came with a Deoxys EX, which was the speed form, which was looped into our EX Emerald set. But then it also came with a non-hollow Deoxys EX, and that artwork was never reproduced in English. I think it was a normal form Deoxys. It actually has really interesting Arita artwork, but it was never replicated in English. And there are some examples of that. Most of the EX cards did get eventually pushed into English in some way. But you've got the Play Promo EXs, like the Jirachi EX, that was never released in English. The Mew EX, which is really expensive these days, the Play Promo Mew EX, that was never released. I think the only one out of you had the Play Lugia and Ho-Oh EX, those weren't released in English.
I remember those.
Yeah. And then I think the Play Celebi actually that's the EX Unseen Forces secret rare Celebi EX. But there are quite a few EX cards in Japanese that weren't released. Most of them were they were packaged into promo boxes or tin promos at some point, but there are still some out there that never saw the light of day in English.
Okay. I mean, wow, that's a lot of information that I didn't know, and I those, but I never made. It's funny. You could see a card like you'd see a gold star, and you'd be like, "Oh, well, that's a gold star." I never made that connection with this or that, and there's apparently it seems like there's a lot of information as far as the Japanese EX series. I mean, maybe you want to make a video covering the differences between, here's the sets that were produced and here's what released, or here's the format, because I had no idea that that's how those were made. That's pretty fascinating.
That's a great idea. I'll definitely do that because that's one of my areas of expertise. So I'll be happy to do that at some point.
Yeah, that would help a lot of people out. Since some of them weren't in traditional sets, what was hard about finding certain ones? I know the Dragon Frontiers version, the furthest offense and defense, correct?
Yes, yeah.
That one had centering issues, and didn't they have print lines in Japanese or not? I
Yes.
don't.
So that, my collection was the set base just because of the issues of finding all of the EXs outside of the sets, like the Mew EX. There's also some like that were released as, that were released in English, but they were released in really obscure ways in Japanese. Like the Rockets Persian that was released as a Battle Road promo, which was really difficult to obtain. To this day, it's close to, I don't know what the exact sales are. I know it's very expensive and very hard to find in PSA 10.
Yeah.
But the, oh goodness, I'm sorry. What was the question again?
Oh.
I just completely lost my train of thought.
So you were explaining some of the difficulties in finding some of those
Yes. Oh,
EXs.
yeah. Okay. Awesome.
What were some difficulties for you as far you mentioned them before, but what were the difficulties in finding those EX cards?
So there are the issues that are present for the entirety of the Japanese EX series, which is that there's low print numbers. EX series was not printed very highly in
Mm-hmm.
English. It really wasn't printed very highly in Japanese. So when you try to find these cards, especially if you're buying them from the United States, it's very likely that they've been out of packs for a very long time. They've had a lot of time to get damaged. So finding mint cards was fairly difficult. Um, Thankfully, being able to buy from Japan, where I think they preserve their
Mm-hmm.
cards a little better, uh, and also with the Japanese new backs, which are they have much better condition coming out of a pack,
Mm-hmm.
and damage isn't as apparent as them on those cards. Uh, it's a little easier than stuff that's really really old, like the Neo series and stuff. But it was still fairly difficult just to find mint condition cards,
Mm-hmm.
and that was prevalent for the whole EX series, the whole set that I was doing. But then there were some set specific issues, like you mentioned. EX Dragon
Mm-hmm.
Frontiers was really, really difficult. That was the most difficult. The vast majority of those cards, I was the first person to grade in a PSA 10.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the populations are still very, very low to this day. Um, so you've got, I think, Salamence is like population 3. I think Rayquaza is maybe population 6, and these are all in unlimited. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so the main issues with Dragon Frontiers are centering. So the
Mm-hmm.
cards would come ridiculously off center out of packs. Um, it's really just like, it's horrific. I'd probably estimate that in first edition, you've got about 5% of cards are within the parameters for a PSA 10. Uh,
Jeez.
and it's worse on the hollows than it is on the regular cards. But all the EXs are hollows, so the EXs are really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Unlimited fixed the centering issues to some degree. I'd say that with Unlimited, you've probably got 20% which are within the parameters of a PSA 10.
Yeah.
But then when you cut it down so much, like with other cards, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't really have to worry about centering at all, because if you find one that's, has a mint condition back and a mint condition front, you're all good to go. It'll probably get a PSA 10. Uh,
Yeah.
but with Dragon Frontiers, that centering's the main issue, even within your population of, cards that don't have scratches, that are, nice on the front, nice on the back. You're then cutting that down by, 80% with Unlimited and 95% with first edition. Like, it's ridiculous, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very difficult to find those cards in PSA
Mm-hmm.
10 condition.
Yeah. Yeah, I know back then when it's kind of something that came up as far as now where the amount of mint condition cards is definitely decreased and the time that I was doing it and the time that you were doing it for Japanese, it just seemed like for Japanese you had a 50-50 shot kind of where it was if it was mint gym mint and you were going to get it graded. But if it wasn't, it was most likely played because I think Japanese people played their cards more or those sets were popular. Like Team Rocket Returns was very popular to play, so they were opened, harder to
Mm-hmm.
find boxes. But
Yeah.
English, it was kind of, did you get a nick on the back or not? It was kind of like 50-50 with the back. But you mentioned the hollow. I know this is a thing that we're both struggling with right now as far as the English EXs with the scratches. I just I don't know if you saw the auction recently for. I picked up some of these. You see these ones going for auction?
Oh
These ones
goodness.
recently.
No, I don't know if I did.
I picked up some. They got. I mean, honestly, from the back, I mean, they look fantastic. But the scratches, you can't see anything, and they weren't
Yep.
marked mint. So just like the guy took one picture of front and back, and people went at it. I mean, I think this morning, something Blastoise from Fire Red Leaf Green was labeled mint, gem mint. Did you see that one going for auction?
I didn't. Yeah. I've
It sold for 330 raw.
for 230,
No, 330.
300. Oh my God. Oh
I
man.
looked at it again. The back was flawless though. No
Yeah.
white marks. The front looked good, but I think maybe I'm getting more attuned to those pictures. I can kind of pick out now some of the scratches or rough marks, and I think it might have a shot at a 9. But going back to my question, EX damage. You have the scratches that are hard to see on the EXs. They're easily scratched. I mean, I think that Celebi EX that I showed you, it's probably going to get a 9. It's got some scratches on it, and different light it shows up. But for Japanese, how was the condition of the cards? How easily were they scratched or preserved compared to your experience now with the English? As far as the hollow quality.
With Japanese, the scratching is much less of an issue. Uh, I sort of agree with your sort of assessment that they were either played or they were stuck in sleeves and protected
Mm-hmm.
fairly well. If you get a card that looks nice in Japanese, if you're able to get that front and back picture in Japanese and the back looks
Mm-hmm.
clean, chances are the front is going to be clean. Um,
Mm,
so
that's good to know.
obviously that's not the case in English. I know as much as you do. I've been buying these cards, and I've seen perfect backs, and then I get them in the mail and I throw them under the light, and it's like, oh no, come on! Like the front is just scratched to oblivion, and it's really easy to
Mm-hmm.
hide that damage in photos. And some
Mm-hmm.
people just don't examine the cards well enough, or you're always hunting for deals. So anything that people mark near mint and the back looks clean, you're like, all right, let me grab that.
Yeah.
Uh, so with Japanese, the scratching wasn't too much of an issue, but I got quite a few 9s through
Mm-hmm.
grading. I've got stacks of them that are just sitting around, Japanese 9s that I don't really want to sell, but no one really wants to buy. They wouldn't sell for
Yeah.
anything that I would be comfortable letting them go for. Knowing
Mm-hmm.
knowing the difficulty and the experience that I have with them. But I think that the reason why a lot of them got 9s was because of minor surface issues and stuff. It's obviously not impossible. The hollow's fairly the same between Japanese and English, so there's going to be some scratches there.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah, it's the print run and quality numbers are definitely something interesting. Kind of going into print numbers and quality for English. We were talking about this on the forum, and it mentioned Team Rocket and Deoxys might have had a different printer or different company from which they went through.
Yeah,
What's your opinion on that as far as those two sets?
it really wouldn't surprise me if obviously we don't really know for certain whether they had a different printer, uh, but given the issues with the reverses, uh, I would think that you know a different printer would make sense for those sets, or maybe just a different printing style or different printing stock. uh, yeah,
Oh,
it's
stock might make.
yeah, just because the issues with those reverses are just so different from the remainder of the uh of the EX series. Deoxys especially, the yeah, exactly, like
Like
that's
it's not curling, it's like twisting,
yeah,
honestly.
and that's standard. Like
But,
um
unseen forces here.
yeah, perfectly straight. So I think the EXs from Team Rocket Returns actually aren't that difficult to grade in 10s if you get a mint copy. Um, but Deoxys is very difficult to score 10s on. Um, so it's every set has its own issues. Every set has, you're probably going to find one card in every set which has ridiculously low PSA 10 population. Um,
Well, I mean, so speaking of some of the specific errors, I'll list them out. One was the warping of it. I don't know if that affects the grade quite necessarily, but it might affect its storage and other factors like that. It's rubbing. And I have a theory that, if you've ever seen regular deck protectors,
Hmm.
If you ever pull them out, you can hear a sort of scraping on it. And so I kind of think that, when I'm going through a collection and I have Ultra Pros or one of the cards with the back on it, I'll cut off the side and one of the bottom, and I'll open it up and pull it out that way because I don't want to slide anything, because the Deoxys and Team Rocket have fraying issues on the side where it's
Yeah.
frayed, and it's chipped as well. Like, chipping is known for jungle, but I think it's Deoxys has the chipping, or is it Team Rocket, or both?
I think
Can't remember.
Deoxys is more known for chipping.
Yeah. So any sliding with that, as far as my opinion, you might risk, roughing up a corner that has just enough where it might pass, but you rub it and it'll open up more. So that's kind of what I see is some of the issues with it. And why do you think the hollows are different from the ultra rares? And then the gold stars seem to have the same fraying and chipping and twisting that the regular hollows have.
Well, I think the EX, so what I've noticed is that the reverse hollows and the hollows generally have the same like warping issues and chipping
Hmm.
issues and stuff. The EXs I've seen don't have too much of a warping issue. Um, I've still seen a couple that are really weird. Um,
Hmm.
but the gold stars definitely those warp and those chip. I don't I don't really know as to why, or I don't really have too much of a theory beyond just perhaps having a different printer. Um,
Hmm.
but again, like, you've got issues with these cards that, are set specific, and, like you've got print lines in Neo Genesis was a huge issue, uh, but not so much in like Jungle. So I don't really know, like,
Why, why from set to set
exactly,
is
why set to set is different, what the printing issues are. Um, I think it might be just a mystery that we'll never figure out the answer to.
Yeah, although one of the members did make a video on the different layering, and
Mm,
that makes me think about it. The hollow foil pattern. Is there a paint or a ink coating that goes over the EXs, and then whatever's left shines through or is covered up? Because I think the hollow sheet is one full sheet all the way through.
yes.
So it's kind of interesting how they're printed, and I'll probably try to link it down below. But for anybody that's interested in seeing how the cards are produced and understanding why you might have issues or errors might occur.
Yeah, yeah, I think that would be really interesting.
Um, then going into we'll go into numbers and then talk about prices. What's your opinion on the different sets and their print runs or their numbers as far as the EX series?
So that's pretty difficult. For English, I would say that you've got sort of like every set is different, which I think is there's no like it wasn't like there was a lot printed at the beginning and then there wasn't much in the middle and then a lot at the end. It kind of like jumps around from my experience. Um,
Hmm.
I think there was, I think the ADV era. So I sort of referring to this in Japanese,
Yeah.
but like uh, the E Series EXs and Hidden
Hmm.
Legends, I think those all had about the same print run. The
Okay.
boxes I see at about the same rate. The EXs I see at about the same rate. I think those all had around the same print run. For Fire Red Leaf Green, I think they printed a lot more of it. Uh, I think but it was a very popular set. People were big fans of it. It had the Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur EX, and those have been
Hmm.
popular for years. Um, so in my experience, that was significantly printed more. I don't know exactly how much more, like was it 1.5 times as many, was it 1.25, I don't think we're ever going to know exact numbers. A lot of this stuff is just like feeling it out, what's the population numbers, what's the availability, what's the box prices looking like.
Hmm.
um, Unseen Forces, Emerald, I think those, and Team Rocket Returns, those I think were, really low print. I think maybe Team Rocket Returns more than Emerald and Unseen Forces. Uh, but like the Unseen Forces EXs are not easy to find. And that might be compounded by the high number of EXs in the set and the fact that you'd only pull 2 to 3 from a box.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to get a full Unseen Forces set, you're looking at opening a case of boxes and
Yeah.
getting lucky and getting no duplicates, so
Mhm.
that's that print run I think is probably more on par with the original
Mhm.
sets. I think Fire Red Leaf Green saw a jump. The later Gold Star sets, like Delta Species, Haul on Phantoms and stuff, I think Delta Species had a fairly low print run. I think Haul on Phantoms was more than Delta Species, but again, like that's just my perception
Mhm.
of seeing a lot more Haul on Phantoms and Delta Species packs out there in 2014 when I got back into it. Uh, Dragon Frontiers, obviously, I think that was printed more, but it was so popular that it just got opened really quickly. Uh, and then Power Keepers was printed out the wazoo and is probably the cheapest EX series box to this day. And the EXs are fairly plentiful from that set. So I think that's what you're looking at in terms of print run numbers.
Mhm.
But again, we'll never have any sort of confirmed information. This is all just from my
Mhm.
experience with the sets and conjecture and stuff. So
I mean, thinking about it and how you said it, it always seemed Ruby and Sapphire, Sandstorm, Dragon. For some
yeah,
reason,
Dragon.
if you think about the list order, you've got 16 EXs from Ruby to Power Keepers, and then halfway through you get to Team Rocket Returns, and so from halfway through, so you got one Team Rocket, Deoxys, although Emerald's right in between, but that one doesn't have any gold stars. So basically everything between there. Um, yeah, some of it doesn't quite make sense. Like the beginning was pretty popular, but Dragon I know was difficult to find boxes, but not packs. Team Rocket Returns and Deoxys weren't hard to find, but they were very valuable. Emerald was pretty easy to find, but then Delta Species and Haul on Phantoms are very, very hard to find, in my opinion, with boxes. Crystal Guardians weren't hard to find because I think I opened up 200 or more of those and Power Keepers. But then Dragon Frontiers, yeah. Thinking about it now, it's kind of weird how one set will be very easy to find packs for, but then there's almost no boxes. Then the next set it'll go high low, and that doesn't quite make sense with like a curve that you would imagine with it. So I guess we might not really ever know. It's
Yeah, it's
frustrating.
yeah. The print numbers are
Uh,
always difficult.
yeah, and then just who knows about playability and production and what was going on. So then I guess we can talk about some of the prices now for people that are interested in the market. We saw recently PSA 10 Gold Stars going for auction. We saw Rayquaza, the Deoxys Trio, sold for 19,100.
Yep.
Because I saw a few other videos looking at the market, and somebody was saying that one sold for 27,000 for a Gold Star, but I think they didn't. I'm not going to mention the name, but the person's always talking about investing, and they're like, "Oh, this is the new record price," or "That wasn't the record price." And I don't think people realize that you can look at what's the name of the app that we have on Forum?
Pokemon price?
No, the
Is it?
best offer finder.
Oh, the best time that doesn't work anymore actually.
It
Um,
doesn't.
but you can go in and you can see what it was sold for. I think the one that was 27 or best offer actually sold for 18,000.
Yeah.
Um,
So people that are looking at those prices have to realize that just because it looks sold, especially for those newer channels, that doesn't mean that's what it sold for.
yeah.
And then a recent discovery was that somebody said that if somebody sends you an offer, if a seller sends a buyer an offer through a message, that the sold listing, shout out to Z&G Emporium, he said that he took an offer for 50 PSA 10 Ivysaur Pikachu's or some Pikachu's PSA 10, and the listing was for 7,500, but he paid 5,000, and the listing says sold for 7,000 plus on it from the original price. It doesn't show the best offer.
Hmm.
So, when you're looking at prices, I guess people got to realize that you know you've got to look around and kind of understand that the prices you see may not be what's paid for the card.
Yeah, I mean that the whole market, I mean, right now this is the issues that we have are symptoms of, ridiculously low supply and massively increasing, culture of paying more for cards, right? So the market has
Mm-hmm.
been on like a boom trend for the last like several months now, probably back to January was when we
Mm-hmm.
really started seeing the price. And this is why people who say that, oh, it's just the virus and all of these, price rises will just go away after the virus ends and, people get out of quarantine. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
We were seeing price rises before, and the virus has just exacerbated this to a certain degree, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But oh goodness, I've lost my train of thought again. What was the question? We'll
Need
edit
some
this
more.
out. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the market prices and kind of
Oh
understanding the
yeah,
growth.
okay, exactly. Um, so yeah, so right now when you have so what we were saying, you can look at this on Pokemon Price, is that there's just you see like when you look at the total market value, so the total amount of cards that were sold and the total value of cards that were sold on eBay for the entirety of the Pokemon hobby, PSA graded Pokemon cards for years, it's relatively stable. It goes up, it goes down a little bit. And then once you get to like January, February, March, April of this year, it goes boom, straight up. The
Yeah.
market value cap has like doubled. People are
Mm-hmm.
spending double the amount of money in total on Pokemon cards that they have, previously. So what this does is you've bought out all the supply, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
no cards left. There's no options. It's such a seller's market because for most cards, even, like PSA 10 set cards, even
Mm-hmm.
PSA 9 set cards now, there's one or two options on the market, and that's that.
Yeah.
So if you want that card, you're going to have to pay the seller's price.
Mm-hmm.
And after that card gets bought, there's no more supply, and it's up to someone else to list it for probably a higher price because they
Yeah.
obviously weren't selling at that lower price, and now it's worth it to them to sell, so they put it up, and maybe they want more.
Mm-hmm.
uh, so there's really has been no opportunity for prices to decrease because especially with PSA shut down, there's no opportunity for new supply. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
cards that have been available for sale have been bought out. Right now, I think what was really interesting to see on the Pokemon price graph was how the number of sales dropped. I
Yeah.
think in May, the number of sales went down, but the value of sales went up.
Yeah. I
So
saw
you're
that.
seeing that less cards are being sold for more money. It's not a linear, it's always been a sort of linear relationship. More cards were sold, more money. Less cards were sold for less money. Now that trend
Yeah.
is completely diverged. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really interesting to see. I mean, I think anyone who tells you that they know what the market's going to look like in 3
Mm-hmm.
months, 4 months, 5 months, they're lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
These prices, they could continue to increase. They could,
Mm-hmm.
you fall off a cliff tomorrow. We really don't know. um,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some informed judgments that you can make about the market, but anything beyond sort of general statements, especially now, like
Mm-hmm.
right when the virus was starting, everyone was like, okay, how hard is this going to hit Pokemon? Like, our price is going to
Yeah.
collapse. And we've seen the
Mm-hmm.
exact opposite. Um, so,
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of what I think about the market. And especially now, like with with everyone just sort of jumping on, oh, this is a new high price, a new high price. Uh, you have to be careful because when there's only one card on the market, it's easy to manipulate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to, get an eBay account, click buy it now, or, accept an offer from, your friend Joe's eBay
Mm-hmm.
account, and then Joe never pays, and now the card has just sold for $27,000 or something.
Yeah.
It's very easy to shill bid an auction.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
there are
Seen
some
a lot
people
of.
who think that, yeah, so there are some people who think that that's the only reason that things are going up. That's ignorant.
Mhm.
But you do have to watch out for that. You got to make sure that, you know, is the highest bidder, is it being bid up by a zero feedback account with 95% bid activity with the seller? That's a red flag. Is
Yeah.
it, you know, sold for $27,000 and then relisted 2 weeks later? That's a
Mhm.
red flag. Um, you know, some of this kind of stuff, you know, you got to be careful with it. Um, Again, I really don't like that people are jumping in without, you know, and saying that a card has sold for $27,000 without doing, you know, things such as contacting the seller, uh, seeing if you can find a buyer. Like, one of
Mhm.
the things that I really like about the forum and I think is really interesting is that we were able to confirm like a $7,000 sale for a PSA 9 Rayquaza Gold Star.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and the buyer actually said, like, you know, people were saying, oh, is this shill bid, like it's so much higher than the, you know, last couple sales. um, and the buyer actually said, you know, yeah, like I think it was probably shill bid, but you know, I'm totally fine paying $7,000 for this card.
Mhm.
That's an organically generated new high price for a card. Whether someone
Mhm.
else is going to pay that again in the future, we don't know. But
Yeah.
confirming that sale, making sure that, okay, this thing actually did go through, that's important in this market. Um,
I mean, it is something to pay attention to. I mean, we were watching the PSA 10 Torchic from that seller. So a person
oh
apparently
God.
bought a PSA 10 Torchic for 4,500, and I know that some people were offering 10 to 11,000 for it. And personally, I mean, if you're going to sell it and you're going to double your money that much in a few months, take it and be happy. But the person apparently seemed to want to sell it for 20,000 plus, and there was 3 or 4 people shill bidding on it.
Yeah.
I don't think the sale went through as far as that end on eBay. But thinking about it, like you said, be cautious about all these new record prices and these paying because there's nothing else going on. I mean, it seems like maybe right now everybody's going to buy and pay these high prices, but once that's done, not that interest is going to drop in Pokemon, but are the people who were looking to collect before, are they going to pay that price now? Just because it's sold for that price now, will it sell for that again in the near future? In the far future, I think we all kind of think Pokemon will keep growing. Somebody mentioned Michael Jordan's rookie card. Did you see that story on the forum where it went from
Yeah,
like
I did.
40, 540, and then it reached 90,000 plus a buyer's premium, and then it dropped back down into the 70s without buyer premiums, as far as I know. So yeah, it went up to a peak and came back down. Recently there might have been. There's always that one person who's going to pay for that card above and beyond the market price to maybe have it, not worry about it. I think we saw a few people buy PSA 10 Milotic EX. So I think some
I
people on
haven't heard about any people buying them. If
the
you have, definitely let me know.
well on the buy threads on the forum, they're no longer asking for it.
Hmm.
If you notice, so both of them are not asking for it. One of them did sell. So I mean, at that point and where I'm at, I'm starting again. But I know that if I were at that point, I would want to finish it. I would pay
Yeah.
that amount to be done with it. And but does that mean a card is worth that price? As far as Pokemon, it's a big set. You're looking to pay for something that nobody had before. PSA 10 Mudkip, Gold Star, and Gyarados were pop zero when I started, and there was pop one of Espeon. So does the fact that somebody completes a set because they complete a set for a card that's hard to find doesn't make that card necessarily that price? What do you think on that?
Well, we saw this in action
Hmm.
with the Gold Star bubble way back in like 2013. Now, I haven't actually, like, you know, I wasn't around in that time, but I've heard the stories. Said everyone is going after the first PSA 10 complete Gold Star set. So the prices for the Gold Stars were really high. Um, you know, everyone was trying to buy to get the complete set to, you know, go after it and to, you know, be the first person to get it. And then someone did it and the prices crashed.
Hmm.
And, you know, a couple more started being graded. It was much easier to get, you know, people, you know, started selling the Gold Stars more. and the prices cratered because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we aren't in 2013 anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
that comparison is a little bit off, but I think it's important to realize that this stuff can happen. Right now, I know of several people who are going after complete PSA 10 or PSA 9 EX sets. And given the prices right now, like I know who I'm competing with on auctions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I know several people are just a few cards away. I know what cards they need. Am I going to go up with them and they have deeper pockets than I am? Like, am I going to go toe to toe to them with an auction on a card that they need? No, because I know that they're just going to outbid me. And
Mm-hmm.
whatever it's going to be a new record price for the card. Uh, but that doesn't mean that, once they complete the set, once the interest in this goes down, that the prices won't go down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I expecting things to go back to where they were, even in October of last year, even last summer, obviously not Charizard EX is in PSA 10 is never going to be a $500 card anymore. I can say that with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
But is it, it's still rising. Is it going to continue to rise? Maybe it settles at 2750. Is it going to stay 2750 for, the
Mm-hmm.
next couple years? I don't know. Once the people pick it out for their set that need it, uh, we might see a decrease in prices.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I definitely feel, for me, I feel FOMO. I want to get all these cards, especially when I first came back. I was like, oh my God, here's all these cards, seeing Rayquaza for 9,000 when I first got back into it. And I was debating it for a few months. I had money. I was like, should I invest in stocks? Could I flip Pokemon cards for money? And then part of it, I was like, I started getting them again. And I was like, I miss this. I miss collecting. And so I was debating it for a long time. By the time I got into it, prices started skyrocketing. I was like, oh crap. But yeah, I felt that FOMO, that I got to get this, I got to get that. When ultimately, if anybody's interested in collecting, I use SM Pratt Scott's consultation services, and he's helped me make choices that are going to be easier for me to get my collection back later on. I'm still going to pay a lot of money, but I'm basically taking $40,000, and I'm going to hopefully grow that into 100,000, 150,000 needed to buy PSA 10 set. So if anybody's interested, definitely reach out to Scott. It helped me put things into perspective. I didn't buy those cards. I bought a lot of raw cards to grade, so I'm kind of glad I'm not buying those cards, but at the same time, there is a feeling that you might miss out on that. When's the next time I'm going to see a Milotic EX again? Or a
Exactly.
Blip?
I was dealing with that. There was a PSA 9 for 450 of my, and I thought that was a fair price, especially in this climate. I was like, all right, am I going to pay 450 for the 9?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I, struggled it for a little bit, and I was like, you know what? I think for right now, I'm just going to pass. I'm going to wait. I'm going to see, what happens what happens when there's more supply on the market, once everything's, settled down for a little bit. And if I have to pay, 450, maybe I have to pay 750 or something. Um, I think I'll be fine with that. But, just like buying during all of this craziness, I am still buying. I think one of the worst things you could do is just to stop buying cards. But I
Yeah.
do think you have to be selective. Like my Lodic EX, it's a highly speculative card, like stuff like Typhlosion, where
Mhm.
the high prices come from the difficulty to grade. I think stuff like that you do have to watch out for. Like
Mhm.
Typhlosion isn't Charizard.
No.
So seeing the PSA 9 first edition prices for that card going like for, I don't know what, 2.5K right now. Um,
Yeah.
that seems it seems interesting to me. It's been there for a little bit.
Mhm.
Am I certain that it's going to, you know, completely the bottom's going to fall out from it? Probably not. That card is never going to be where it was before all this. But again, it's just something that's like, it doesn't really make sense to me, knowing the hobby and knowing the factors that go into determining a card's price. Um, So it's,
Yeah.
it's, you got to make your informed buying decisions, and sometimes you'll be right and sometimes you'll be wrong.
Yeah. Sometimes yours, sometimes yours. I'm glad that we got a chance to cover quite a bit of topics here. One thing that I wanted to go over at the end was fellow collector appreciation. Who are three people in the community you really appreciate? Could be someone influential, underappreciated, new. Who are three people that you've been in it continuously longer than I have? So who are three people that stand out to you?
Three people that stand out to me. I think I'll sort of divvy this up into like a small time collector, a medium time collector, and like a high, or I don't know, maybe like small value collector, medium value collector, and high value collector. Uh,
Okay.
some, obviously there's all of the, Scott, Gary, they have incredible collections. For a high value collector, someone who really stands out to me is Charlie. I was actually able to, so he's a Sherlocker on the forum. He's been around for quite a
Mhm.
while. I was, given the opportunity to check out his collection. And it is
Mhm.
incredibly impressive. He's got so much cool stuff, so much rare stuff. He has probably the largest collection, rivaling David Person and Scott, of modern English Pikachus, trophy Pikachus. It's really incredible to see
Really?
those, to see what he's been able to put together. The variety in his collection is really impressive. He has a significant amount of signature cards. Some are really rare, and again, just really impressive. So the breadth and the value of that collection is, something that I think is really interesting, and just the amount of like small time obscure stuff that he has that probably isn't worth a ton of money, but you could just like, you don't see it, you rarely see it. Uh, so I think he's someone that, I look up to, and uh, has a really impressive collection. Uh, for a medium sort of medium collector, I would think, you know, there are people who I've, bought off of for a long time. I've always, I've always been interested, honestly, in your collection and, what you were able to do. I think our interests align very sort of similarly with modern full arts
Mhm.
and EX series cards. I always really enjoyed following your collection as you did it originally on YouTube and stuff, watching those box openings. That was really fun. Uh, so I admire you definitely. I think
Thank you. I appreciate it.
some other people I would want to shout out, Pokemon Argentina. I think he is coming down
Oh
to a
yeah.
complete PSA 10 EX set. He's, really, really,
Mhm.
to be able to do that, it's really cool. He's also got level X's as well, which I think are awesome. Uh, Obviously he hasn't been around as long as, and I don't have like a super personal relationship with him. But I definitely really appreciate,
Mhm.
or I really, what's the word I'm looking for? I empathize with the difficulty of putting that set together, and it's really impressive.
Mhm.
But also, I'm really impressed with you sort of just coming back and having the courage to like do it all over again, after selling it off. Uh, for
Thank you.
a small
It's a daunting
value,
task.
uh, for a small value collector, Sini on on E4, uh, she is, her collection, she doesn't spend a lot of money on it, but she is sort of the definition of someone who's in it for enjoyment, and not for. Am I cutting out?
You're cutting out a little bit, but I was trying to remember who you're talking about though. Uh, who who is that one again? The name
So
sounds familiar, but I'm trying to
her
connect it to a.
Yeah, so her username on the forum is Xzini, Xzini, and she has the Alolan Vulpix
Oh,
profile.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh,
yeah.
so she's just the definition of someone who does it for the interest and
Mhm,
not for value
mhm,
or money. A lot of people, even on the high end of Pokemon, the they justify the collecting as being like a sort of, they can justify spending all of this money on Pokemon cards because in the
mhm,
future it's going to be worth more. They can sell it for at minimum what they paid for it. And that goes into a
mhm,
lot of those decisions. And, I've talked to these people. I know that's the case. Obviously, the people who, do high-end Pokemon, they have a very, significant interest in Pokemon.
mhm,
But the organic collecting interest and organic collecting enjoyment that I see
mhm.
from a lot of people who, oops, the phone's ringing here. Hold on, just give me a second.
Yep, they're cut out. That's what happens when you have dial-up connection. You can't have both the internet and the phone at the same time. Shout out to anybody that remembers that.
We're gonna have to do some editing on this, but okay.
Probably, yeah. But
So
Zini,
as
though,
a
you were talking.
yeah, so the collecting enjoyment, she buys lower graded cards because it's cheaper, but what she's been able to put together is just really impressive. The cohesiveness of her collection, Gen 3 stuff, she's a big fan of Alolan Vulpix, but also we have some interest in common Salamence, Flygon, Gen 3 Pokemon.
Okay.
uh, it's it's great to see that kind of collecting rewarded and encouraged on the forum. I think sometimes, it's in our name, we're the elite forum, but I think sometimes people think that, we're only a place for people with, $10,000 PSA cards, and that's just not the case.
Mm,
We
yeah.
encourage, we love people who are, the joke is like LCC, low capital collector. Uh, but it's easy to be a part of our community and to be a part of the Pokemon collecting community regardless of how much money you have or how much money you can spend. uh, you
Mm,
know I was I started collecting in high school, and I really couldn't spend a lot of money, and I did not have a very impressive collection. Even to this
mhm.
day, like I've been able to put together some stuff that I'm really proud of, but the monetary value, the entire value of my collection, people will drop that on one card.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's about. It's not about how much money you spend. It's about the enjoyment you derive from the cards, the
Mhm.
cohesiveness, and the sort of unique experience you get from putting your collection together. So I think that's really important that sometimes people miss. It's not about the money. uh, so
Well,
we're getting like, especially
yeah.
with the investment channels these days, that's sort of why I put out my video, was
Yeah.
to sort of counter that. But
No, I think it's a good point for us to end that video on, was talking about, collecting and enjoyment of it, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what is growing this. I mean, people, even if they're just investing in it, I think people have some sort of personal investment in it, as far as a connection, and Magic the Gathering had a big investment when Bitcoin crashed. People were trying to dump their money in it. Those people probably, it's assumption of mine, but they probably had some connection with Magic the Gathering. They played it, watching somebody make a video on the value of cards, looking at Odyssey, and then looking at Pokemon. I was like, oh crap, I was playing MTG and Odyssey, you know, and I was looking at the EX set. I was like, part of me was like, oh crap, I could have bought those cards, EX cards, and kept those. They're worth so much more now. But I think the collecting aspect of it is important, though. Like that's why people probably got into it, because they have some sort of familiarity with it. And I think this is a good point. Hopefully this series can continue. I can find more people that want to talk about it, and we can get people into the collecting aspect, and maybe that'll help stabilize with things, and keep that growth going forward. So yeah, Ethan, thank you for doing this first podcast with me, or interview. I really appreciate it.
awesome. Well, happy to be here, and thank you very much for interviewing me.